and welcome to my 2024 reading stats. We're now in 2025, so it's time to look back at my previous year's reading stats and go through the total number of books read, the author stats, the genre stats, all of that good stuff. And we're going to start with the total number of books read, which was 217, which is frankly bonkers when you think about it. 217. Now I will say right now most of this is comics, and you will see in a minute when we go through the genre breakdown and everything else, a lot of this was comics, but at the same time that is still an absolutely bonkers number, and it surprises me every single year. I know I usually read around the 200 mark because of the amount of comics I read, but that is still an absolutely bonkers number that is slightly blowing my mind. When you break that down into total pages read, that comes out at 40,887, which is frankly ridiculous, to be honest. That is a massive number. It is an average number for me, though I usually am around the 40,000 mark every single year in terms of page count, but that is still a bonkers number of pages to have read in a year. I won't lie, that is still absolutely bonkers. If you break that down further into how many days it takes me to read a book on average, it works out at just over 3 days per book, which makes total sense because usually a novel can take me between 3 and 5 days to read depending on the length of it, and then obviously the comics has kind of push that down to 3, which makes total sense. I'm absolutely fine with that, and it also averages out at about 111 pages per day, which again is absolutely fine. In terms of the average books per month, that is 18, which is ridiculous, and once again it is a lot of comics. I will say it is a ridiculous amount of comics, which you will see in a minute when we get into the pie charts. And actually now going into the pie charts, as we can see from the format, it was 7% audio, which is absolutely fine. I generally only use audiobooks when I am cleaning and things like this, just to make it less of a boring job, to be honest, and to keep on reading. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not going to try and make that a bigger number or anything else. 7.4 is absolutely fine for me in terms of how many audiobooks I'm reading. In terms of print, it is 36.6%, which again sounds about average. And then the massive one is 56% digital, which again, to be honest, makes perfect sense to me because obviously, like I said, I read a lot of comics. I read a lot of them on Marvel Unlimited, which is a subscription service, so it makes total sense that a lot of my books, or over half of my books that I'm reading, are digital, especially as I buy a lot of ebooks as well. So that is absolutely fine. I'm perfectly fine with how all of this is divided up. It sounds about right for me and it works for my collection, so I am perfectly fine with that. I'm not going to say I want to read more print books this year or whatever, because it is all reading, it is all books. I enjoy all the formats, so that is absolutely fine. In terms of the audience share, we are talking 7.8% children, then 27.6% adult, and then 64.5% YA. And this is fine. The only thing I would be surprised about, or the only thing I am surprised about, is the middle grade share, because I genuinely thought it was around sort of 10-12% middle grade when it's actually only 7.8. So I definitely want to be hiring that a little bit more, because I do really enjoy middle grade books, and I frankly do not read anywhere near enough of them. So yeah, I definitely want to be changing that into the new year and changing that into this year with reading more middle grades, because I really enjoy that age range of books, and apparently I do not read anywhere near as many as I thought I do. So definitely want to hire that in this year. But in terms of adult and YA, I am perfectly fine with the percentages on those. If anything, the adult is a little bit higher than I was expecting, and that's absolutely fine. I just know that I enjoy all the age ranges, so all of that is fine. The only thing I would change, like I said, is maybe reading some more middle grade, because I do genuinely really enjoy that age range. And then if we look at form, this is where you start seeing the comic share, shall we say, because I read 30.4% novels, 1.4% novellas, and then 68.2% comics. And I would say I'm shocked, but I'm not, because I know I read a lot of comics this year. I think I've actually got the specific numbers somewhere on here. I'll look for that in a minute, but I know I read a lot of comics this year because I did 2 30 graphic novels in 30 days challenges. I then mainlined Deadpool and Wolverine comics in the lead up to that movie. I read a lot of Echo. I also mainlined Agatha, Death and Billy comics when Agatha All Along was coming out, and yeah, I was reading a lot in between as well, so to be honest, that doesn't surprise me. It does not surprise me one bit, but at the same time it kind of does, because I'm like, did I really read 2/3, nearly 3/4 of my reading was comics? Like, that is ridiculous when you think about it, because I genuinely thought I read more novels. But apparently 2/3, nearly 3/4 of my reading was comics, and to be honest, I'm not going to change that. Because I know how much I absolutely adore comics. I know I absolutely love reading them. They bring me great amount of joy, as much as like novels do and things like this. So I'm not going to change that, but I'm just going to say that is a ridiculous number. Like, only 31% of my reading in total was prose and novels and novellas. That is slightly ridiculous. And I think I'm just going to move on from that, because that is just a bit too much for my brain to comprehend, and I'm going to need to sort of internalise that and just have to think about that. But anyway, we're moving on to genre, and it was 40% fantasy and 45% sci-fi, and I genuinely thought it would be the other way around. But again, the sci-fi probably comes in with like X-Men, it probably comes in with like Deadpool and Wolverine as well, because I count them as more like sci-fi characters. I also read a lot of Murderbot this year, things like this, so I'm genuinely surprised I read more sci-fi than I did fantasy. And then I also managed to read 12.9% horror, which I won't lie, I am very happy with, because I really, really like horror. It is a genre that I am increasingly enjoying and finding more stuff to read in. All of this kind of thing, so I'm really, really happy with that. I won't lie, it was probably a good 10% James Tynion, because I read a lot of James Tynion this year, because I do think he is the absolute king of the horror graphic novel. But again, I'm absolutely fine with that, because I really, really like horror. It's a genre I'm learning to really, really enjoy and find more stuff that I enjoy in it. It is a genre I am really excitedly learning about and everything else, so I'm really, really liking that. The 1% historical, I'm not entirely sure what that was, and then the 0.5% romance was obviously my trying romance books for the first time reading vlog, and again, I'm fine with that genre breakdown. I am surprised it is more sci-fi than fantasy, I won't lie, but again, that is probably the comics skewing it a little bit, because a lot of comics do go a little bit more sci-fi than they do fantasy for me, just because superheroes like Iron Man and the Avengers and things like this are generally a little bit more sci-fi than they are fantasy, just because they are like super soldiers, men in like robotic suits, all of this kind of thing, so I kind of count them more as sci-fi. So I'm generally happy with that genre breakdown, just a little bit surprised that it was 5% more sci-fi than it was fantasy, but I enjoyed most of what I read, so again, that is absolutely fine. It is not something I'm going to be trying to change anytime soon. It is pretty sort of standard for me, and I do quite enjoy everything I read. Then if we go into the source of the books, I am reading 48.4% of my own TBR, which is perfect, because obviously that is nearly half of my owned TBR, and that is my backlist, and then 26.7% is my purchased in 2024. So essentially, I really like that is a really good mix of things that I have bought that year and keeping on top of the new stuff, while also focusing on my backlist as well. That is absolutely fine. I am really, really liking those numbers. Those numbers are exactly where I want them to be. In terms of the library, it was 14.9%, so that is a few audiobooks, and then the majority of my manga and a couple of other books as well. That is exactly where I want that to be as well, because obviously I want to be supporting my local library while also reading my backlist and keeping on top of my new purchases and stuff like this. So that is absolutely fine. I really like that number. That is a nice number to have as a like where I'm getting my books from, so that is absolutely fine. Borrowed 1.9%, that will be Marvel Unlimited, where I'm getting all of my comics from, or the vast majority of my comics from, so that is absolutely fine as well. I like that I am not constantly buying new comics, because that can be a very, very expensive habit, especially with how much I mainline comics when a new project comes out, so that is absolutely fine. I'm really, really happy with that number. 3.7% is from Libro FM, so that is the rest of my audiobooks. Again, that is absolutely fine. And then then 1.9% is Libby, which is again the library. So perfectly happy with that number, especially when you add it to the rest of the library, which works it out at about maybe 16% from the library in total. So that is absolutely fine. I am perfectly fine with this like pie chart, because it means I'm keeping on top of my TBR. Like I said, I'm also keeping on top of the things I am buying in that year and reading those quickly and getting them off my TBR, while also supporting my local library and saving a ton of money by getting everything off of Marvel Unlimited. So in total, I am really happy with this pie chart. It is possibly the pie chart I am happiest with out of all of them, because it is exactly what I want it to be, and it is exactly what I expected it to be. Then if we look at the number of books finished per month, you can see exactly which months I was doing some kind of reading challenge. So you can see in February and August I was doing a graphic novel a day challenge, which obviously spiked everything up there. In July I was mainlining Deadpool and Wolverine, which definitely spiked everything up again. October I was reading through everything I could to do with Something's Killing the Children, and that entire series, which was about 10 things in total, I think, which obviously is going to spike things up further than usual. And I was just reading a lot in October anyway, because October is my favourite month of the year. I've got no idea what happened in May and why I read so little, but to be honest, sometimes months like that happen. It's absolutely fine. These things happen, and I'm pretty happy with how my numbers sort of went. They're a little bit all over the place, but I'm still pretty happy with them. I'm still reading things. I didn't end up in a major slump or anything, so it is absolutely fine. Which we can also see from the star rating, because as you can see, the majority of what I read was 4 stars. I didn't have any 1-star reads, or I think I may have had one maybe, but anyway, I didn't have that many, and the majority of the things I read was 4 stars, and I also had a couple of 5 stars in there as well. So it's a pretty good sort of spread. I'm really happy with that, as long as it is not the vast majority being 1 and 2 stars. I am fine with that. Having a majority of 4 stars means I know my reading taste, and I'm really happy with how many 4 stars I had and how many books I read that I really enjoyed. My camera battery died, so anyway, moving on, we then go on to the author and artist gender, and this was where I fell down a little bit, and this is the part where I go, I need to make improvements here, because it was 61.9% male, 35% female, and 3.1% non-binary. Now, I'm pretty happy with the non-binary section of things. 3.1% is a great starting point, so I'm reasonably happy with that number. It can obviously get bigger, but as a starting point, it is not too bad. But then 35% female is where I'm slightly annoyed with myself, because I can definitely do better than that. I know I can do better than that, and I can't believe that yet again male authors are the vast majority of what I read, because what I really want to be doing is getting that more towards an equal number male-female author share, to be honest. And the fact that it is not there yet, despite the fact that I've been working on this for years, is really annoying me. So that is definitely something I'm going to be focusing on in the future through this year, and I'm going to be trying more, be more conscious of that, and it is definitely something I need to be working on. So that is definitely something for the future to be looking at and keeping in mind. And then the same could be said for the nation of origin, because it is 78.7% US based, and I'm from England, and I only read 12.5% UK authors, and that needs to change, because I want to be supporting more UK authors, but then also I want to be supporting more authors from around the world. So I definitely want to be focusing more on books from people from other parts of the world, not just the US and the UK. I obviously want to be focusing more from other places around the world as well, so that is definitely something I'm going to be changing in the future, because I'm not happy with how many books from the US I am reading. So I'm definitely going to be working on that next year. And then the same could be said for the authors of colour, and then also queer authors, because I usually try and track this in one pie chart, but for this year the spreadsheet I've got just did not do that, so it's gone into 2, so I'm just going to put both of them here. But as you can see, I read 21.2% authors of colour, and then also 22.6% queer authors, which works out at around 40% of what I'm reading. So That's not too bad. I'm usually around 35%, so the fact that I'm now creeping towards 40 is a lot better than I was expecting. I was genuinely expecting that to be around the 35% again, so I'm happy that I'm still reaching more towards the 50-50 goal that I've been working towards for the last few years. But again, there is definitely room for improvement on that one, because the vast majority of what I'm reading still is by straight white people, which is only giving me one perspective on the world, and I want to be reading more from queer authors, more disabled authors, more POC authors, everything else. So that is definitely something I need to be working on in the future as well. I am doing better than I was last year in 2023, but there is still room for improvement. And then also on that note, there is not a pie chart for this in the spreadsheet, but I did also read 9 disabled authors as well, but again, that needs to get better, and I need to be doing better on that one as well. So in summary for all of this, I want to be reading more middle grade books, I need to be reading more female authors, I need to be reading more non-binary authors, I need to be reading more from people from around the world, and also I need to be reading more own voices books as well, because I'm not doing as badly as I expected, but there is still room for improvement. And that is where I'm going to be leaving this video, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up, comment down below, tell me a stat you need to improve upon this year, I'd love to know. Or if you don't have that much time, leave me a chart emoji down below to let me know that you were here. I'll also leave a link as well down below to all of my social media for to check it out, including to the Comic Book Sanctum, which is my website dedicated to Marvel Comics, which is obviously the vast majority of apparently what I've read this year. So if you want more information on all of those, that will be linked down below. Or if you just want to see any more of my videos where I hopefully improve upon these stats, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time everyone, bye!